To your point about being in the field, like I personally, this goes back to my early days. I remember I was a sales rep in my late 20s, and it's like, man, my manager like never goes in the field. Like they never see
Hmm.
offices. And there's so many DSOs that I speak to that have leadership that sits in a Excel spreadsheet,
Yeah.
like looking at numbers. Like, how important is that, man? Like,
Oh,
what
it's a different world.
where are you at mentally, like going into the next couple weeks, just being out in the field and experiencing what you did?
Yeah, I'm going back next week for you guessed it, a pilot implementation because I felt like we had to be there to see this, to see the challenges they're facing. I mean, so thankful that we were earlier this week with some of the challenges that we faced. I want to go back to one quick point. I well hit on this with the field, but I wanted to say something to what you were alluding to earlier with. I think more vendors would be surprised at how many people within DSOs, leadership and otherwise, are willing to be that. I don't want to go full all the way as a test dummy or guinea pig. Not maybe some sort of beta tester, but would be are willing to kind of work with you if you express your limitations and you say this is where we're not as great, but we're getting better, and we'd love to get your input along the way.
All right, Clayton, here we are again.
Here
Another
we are.
episode of Off Script for what month is this? Geez, January? We
Losing track.
where are we? I know the Bills are still in the playoffs, so I
I know
got
the
that going.
Panthers are not. Congrats
Yeah.
to you, though.
How was the game?
It was amazing. It was. I mean, I've seen so much about it. It brought everybody back. Cam Newton banged the drum. The crowd was all in. We thought we were down and out at first, and we weren't. Eventually, crawled back in it. Took the lead late. It was. It's unfortunate to say you lost, but it's everything you could want out of a loss when you backdoor into the playoffs. So we came away hopeful for the
Yeah, I
future.
think the momentum for next year, and this isn't a football podcast, but it definitely could be. Momentum for next year, just because of that and the showing, is going to help that team be
Oh,
successful.
without a doubt. You were in two different places as teams. You guys need to go win it, like now.
Let's talk about pilots. And I don't want to overdo pilots, but pilots are just not done, in my opinion, that well. Like, I don't know if you can point to a few companies here and there that are really dialed it in because it's difficult because every single practice, every single DSO is different. Some general thinking in your mind about pilots, like thinking about it from this perspective, Clayton, like selecting locations, picking the right regional managers, the right offices, the right operators, trying to get people on the right page, prioritizing, what software and platforms to focus on. What from your experience, what have you seen work most effective, or just overall general thoughts when it comes to tech, pilots, and implementation? I guess they're two separate things, but tech,
Yeah.
pilots, and what would you want to tell people that are in the space to help them be more successful doing it?
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a loaded question there, right? With a lot of facets to it. You say like pick a vendor that's done things well. I think I could name a few. I can get to that here in a bit. But when you're evaluating a pilot, I mean, it starts with transparency, right? What are you providing? What value can you provide to that organization? And if you're crystal clear on the value you can provide, then I think you have a lot higher chance for a success rate from the pilot. So what can we provide? What specifically can we provide to your organization that's missing? And if you're being kind of truthful with yourself and with the DSO, you're going to have a really good shot. If nothing else, a good experience. You evaluated. You probably learn a lot. They learn a lot, even if you go in different directions. From there, I mean, that's the intro conversations, right? That's the demo. Really digging in. If you don't already have a relationship, I mean, when I think about big strategic vendors out there, the Overjets of the world, Align Technology, Henry Schein, some of these people that you probably already have some really great relationships with. So they probably already understand the business at a really high level. If you don't and you haven't worked with that DSO before, that's where I think the differentiator can really be between success and failure at the pilot level. Taking the time to understand specifically who you're dealing with as an organization, how they're structured, who can really move the needle for you. Do you think you have a champion internally, or do you actually have a champion internally, somebody that can go and operate and strategically put the pieces in place to get everybody on board? So if you can check all those boxes up front, and then again, we said, hey, that's just the beginning. Now the hard part starts, and that's the hard part. And then now the hard part starts all over again. There's the setup piece, there's the integration piece, there's getting to those offices. I think those offices should probably know you. I don't think it's ever a bad idea to get there, to get in person. Hopefully you don't just show up to a dental office, but you have somebody from the DSO there with you, guiding you along, introducing you, making sure that those offices has everything they need, seeing the challenges that they're involved in. I was in the field earlier this week. We forget sometimes. It's amazing when you get in there and you feel the energy, but you also feel everything that they're dealing with internally. And then clearly defining, as we talked about, hey, what can you do for the group? Clearly defining. Once you understand the group and you know what they need, where can you help? And if you have 10 KPIs you can measure, maybe this group only needs 6 or 7 of them. Hone in on those. And then measure them and bring them the results. Don't make them ask. Don't make them inquire. Good, bad, ugly. Because even if they're bad or mediocre, how do we go back and kind of reorganize ourselves and reorient the offices and find out why? So again, I feel like I could keep going on this one, but that's as base level as I can get that answer.
Well, there's a lot to it. I mean, there was a ton of questions inside that statement I made. The value thing is interesting to me too, because being, like you said, being truthful, like there's salesmanship that has to go on in order to get some of these deals closed. And I've run into situations where, especially like emerging tech, earlier stage businesses, they are not completely forthcoming about capabilities because they are so excited about winning the deal, and they don't effectively communicate value, and they don't effectively set the proper expectations. I had a situation recently. Somebody called me up, a founder of an AI company, and they are in jeopardy of losing a deal because some of the conversions weren't as high, the percentages, as what he stated in the beginning. However, part of it is because the DSO wanted to do something a certain way that the founder wasn't comfortable explaining. Like, listen, if you do it this way, the chances of you converting is going to be lower. So he just like said, okay, whatever you want, whatever you want, whatever you want. This is the value I can create. And didn't really set the expectation, like, if we do this, like, this is going to be your potential outcome. And because they didn't do that, they didn't get on the same page, and there's a risk of losing the business. So I say that because I think overall, realistic expectations should be set. And I think you're in a better place to be that way versus over-promising and under-delivering, because this market is just so damn small.
Yeah.
Right? Like, do you feel the same way?
That I feel bad for that founder. It's a tough place to be, right? You know that your product works best under these conditions or in this environment or when parameters are set in this way for a pilot, yet somebody's pushing you in another direction and saying, hey, we want to do it this way, and you want the pilot, right? Like you want the integration, you want the opportunity. So that's a tough spot.
Yeah, it totally is. And to your point about being in the field, like I personally, this goes back to my early days. I remember I was a sales rep in my late 20s, and it's like, man, my manager like never goes in the field. Like they never see offices. And there's so many DSOs that I speak to that have leadership that sits in a Excel spreadsheet,
Yeah.
like looking at numbers. Like, how important is that, man? Like,
It's a
where are you at mentally, like going into the next couple weeks, just being out in the field and experiencing what you did?
Yeah, I'm going back next week for, you guessed it, a pilot implementation, because I felt like we had to be there to see this, to see the challenges they're facing. I mean, so thankful that we were earlier this week with some of the challenges that we faced. I want to go back to one quick point. I will hit on this with the field, but I wanted to say something to what you were alluding to earlier with. I think more vendors would be surprised at how many people within DSOs, leadership and otherwise, are willing to be that. I don't want to go full all the way as a test dummy or guinea pig. Not maybe some sort of beta tester, but are willing to kind of work with you if you express your limitations and you say this is where we're not as great, but we're getting better, and we'd love to get your input along the way. It goes back to that honesty, that transparency piece. If you're willing to kind of state that up front, I think people will be surprised at how many people are willing to say, you know what, that's okay. No one's doing that part well. We believe in you guys, and we believe that you're working towards it. So I just
I
wanted
think
to
it
put
probably
that point
depends
out
upon
before I
this.
forgot.
It probably depends upon what they're selling
Mm-hmm.
too, right?
Doesn't work every
Like some,
time.
yeah, I mean, if you have a practice management system, right, you're not going to be like, hey, we're working through some stuff over here.
Yeah.
It might, but some of the newer companies that are introducing innovation into the space could probably have that leeway better, you're thinking?
Yeah, I think so. Honestly, if we're all being honest here, everyone's probably working through something. I don't care how established you are. So, like you said, it's a delicate balance. I've been on both sides. I've been sales, business development before. Now, kind of sit on this side. I know how it goes. Anything feels like you could lose the deal, and it can. I mean, if people lose faith or confidence in you, it can. So it's a fine line. There's no kind of easy way to do that, for sure. But I think more than ever, as people have kind of been burned on some tech, or kind of that, somebody wrote an article about promise fatigue. If anybody wants to go look that one up, we know now that we've been overpromised to one too many times. So it kind of is refreshing when people talk through their limitations. I don't want a bunch of people to go out there, all 30, 40 of our listeners go out there and put out all their limitations to somebody and lose every deal they're trying to win
Right.
here. But it can be
Yeah, my
refreshing.
stuff sucks, but we're working through it.
But
Yeah,
we're
probably
working
not the
on
right
it.
approach.
Hey, we're trying over here. Isn't that good enough? Yeah. But no, be back to your point of the field. Yeah, it's essential. You and I have both lived it. I just loved it. I loved getting out there, meeting everybody, spending quality time with our leaders in the field, who were amazing, by the way, blew me away. I'm sure the same will happen next week. And it's just essential to getting the pieces, so we're not just sitting there, like you said, just creating, and pushing downward, that we're out there kind of in the trenches when these things are being put into place on the
I
opposite
feel
field.
like that's got to only help you be able to communicate better internally too, like what's really happening out there versus just listening to them, which I know you do a great job of, versus listening, but we're actually face to face with that person. Like there's nothing better than that.
Yeah, it's different. You're building the relationship. You got some sweat equity there. You can roll up your sleeves a little. You see firsthand all the challenges that are coming in these offices every day. I mean, day one of the integral people has a call. Our phone keeps blowing up. She's checking it. You could tell she's texting, trying to put some things off, and then she's like, my fire alarm is going off in my house, and it's not stopping, and I got to go home. So we lost her for, an hour, came right back. But these are the things that you deal with on a daily basis. That's not even the 17 stories I could tell about patients during my 2-day visit.
Well, that just reminds me of when you think about some of these vendors that are just so uber aggressive in your inbox all the time. There seems to be a lack of understanding that these people are humans. Their fire alarms go off, like they got to pick up kids from school. They got stuff going on, and I feel like there's some disconnect sometimes between what's really happening and why they're not paying attention to your messages. The priority in their personal lives and professional is can be just completely forgotten because these founders of these businesses and these leaders are just driving so hard for results. A lot of times for VCs, right? Like they're investors and all that. But the reality is, we got to,
so
yeah,
focused on that one thing, and these people are dealing with a lot more than that. Thousands of daily pieces.
operationally, did you learn anything this week in the field that really sticks out? Not to put you on the spot here, but anything top of mind that you saw that you really were like, yeah, if I was running a DSO right now, this is how I would do it.
Yeah,
Any thoughts there?
yeah. I mean, hire good people and competent people and forward thinking people, and I ran into a lot of that over the past couple of days. People that really cared about the direction of these offices. It. Sometimes we were in an office for an hour. Sometimes there were dual office managers, so we were spending a little more time with them, and our regional managers, our regional business partners were there with us. Hygiene coaches were there with us throughout this whole process. So some people got to know a little better than others, but in the 2 days I spent with some people, in the 2 hours I spent with others, I mean, there were just a lot of positives to take away on just good people, had a lot of respect from their peers, from everything I saw. There were some offices, we were there right at their busiest time, and people were being pushed. People get pushed to their limits in some of these situations, and maybe people are on a little better behavior when we're there and kind of wandering around or somebody's over their shoulder. But I just thought people handled a lot of difficult situations really well, and they seem to have their processes down. They seem to kind of have their culture in place. I saw a manager who apparently before we had gotten there had a tough day, and her finance coordinator walked in there with a bouquet of flowers and said, hey, I know it's a tough day for you. And, she kind of got a little teary-eyed. We all kind of got a little teary-eyed. It was just unscripted, just a beautiful, beautiful thing to kind of see when you have that kind of camaraderie in an office. So I don't know if that answered your question about,
Yeah, man.
what would you do differently? Because it all comes back to the people. There's a lot of nuts and bolts and different pieces to the office, obviously, than that. But what I saw this week, the people, the camaraderie, that stood out the most.
They're the drivers. I mean, let's be real. Like that's one thing that gets lost, right? You guys have tons of locations. How many employees at each location? What's their focus? Their focus is on the patients. Yeah, it's not on what technology is out there. Like that was one thing. I went to an office locally here in Utah before the Christmas break, and like they don't have a freaking clue like what's out there. like my expectation is that they're gonna have an idea of like all the different choices that exist and
Mm-hmm.
like what they can use AI for, what's inpatient financing, what imaging solutions are out. Like they don't have a freaking clue.
Nope.
Like all the different things that are available for DSOs for practices to implement inside their businesses. Their number one concern is who's on the schedule, who's coming up next, and what patients are going to be in the chair so that they can pay attention to them, right? And
Or
that was one thing.
what gaps are on the schedule we need to get filled.
That too, the pressures from the doctor and from the regionals, from the managers of those practices as well. But that was one thing that stood out to me in this world that we live in of like, growth and enterprise value, EBITDA, tech. It's like they don't give a what about any of that. And that's
Nor
one thing
does
we
the
all need to
patient.
realize and remember is like they care about butts in the seats.
Yeah, and the butts in the seats don't care about any of that either. The patients aren't as concerned as maybe we'd like them, as probably the new tech pitch makes it seem. I think there are standards, right, and there's expectations of the new age patient and what they want to see and what they don't want to see. But the core pieces still remain the same of what they care about, and a lot of that comes back to how they're treated in an office, how they feel after they leave the office.
Yeah, absolutely. You text me something about consolidation in tech. I've been writing a bunch about point solutions. Like there's a place for them, just a single point. This is what we do. We are this. But that the Apple, like I'm an Android phone guy, but my computer, my iPad, I've got Apple TV. Like that ecosystem is real to me.
But you're an Android phone guy.
I won't do it. Yeah, we don't need to get into that. I just won't do it.
We won't go there, man.
Pixel,
Apple
yeah.
TV guy, I am as well, but I've given in on the phone long ago, I guess. But
I
story
guess
for
like
another
that.
episode.
Yeah, we don't need to get into Apple versus Android. The Google Pixel is a great phone. Just saying, it has RCS chat. I can like something.
You're going there anyway.
Yeah,
I
I
want to hear
am.
this about consolidation.
But yeah, like point solutions versus you see the acquisition of Dental B by Overjet. Pearl is starting to do some of this. Some of these AI companies are starting to bring together a lot of different solutions, like inside one Apple like ecosystem, right? Like, but you text me about something a little on the other side of that. It's like, well, if you try and do too much, you're really not gonna be good enough, right? At those things that you're trying to do. What was your thinking on the text and like the
Yeah.
consolidation attack, all of that? What general thoughts?
Yeah, that's why I texted it to you because I know you live in this world, this environment where you see it. You stay up more than anybody with new tech, new AI. Be that the smaller companies up and coming, focused on doing one thing really well or getting one area or aspect really right, or the bigger ones like you mentioned, the Overjets and the Pearls of the world. So it's just it's the end all be all would be hey, let's partner with one partner that does everything perfectly, that is our distributor, our PMS, supplies us with our clear aligners, as well as does all our RCM functioning. That'd be amazing. But I think the tendency of any big company is to continue to try to innovate, which we're very appreciative of, right? I love new innovation and trying to stay on the cutting edge. I don't think anybody wants a partner that is just willing to fall behind. But it feels like we lose sight. I think I've talked about it before, like lose sight of that initial foundation that made that product great. And we stop piloting. We stop measuring the impact that's being had. And I think a lot of times the DSO operators, DSO leadership starts looking around saying, how are we doing with this, that, or the other? Literally plug in any of the ones. I don't want to call anybody out here by
Yeah.
name, but how are we doing with any of these tech implementations or strategic partnerships that we have on our business? How's it going at its core? How's it going? Not what are they creating and what's the newest thing we're piloting on 5 of our locations that they're doing, but how's the core thing that we signed up for 2 years ago going? And are we still hitting the metrics that we set out to hit? And I
So
don't
you're
know. In a
saying
way,
that
it's kind of like a
don't get
never stop
comfortable.
piloting. What's that?
Yeah, I was gonna say, don't get comfortable. You're telling some of these legacy companies that have agreements with these DSOs, like just because the money's coming out each month, you better continue to innovate because we're looking to make sure that it's still being impacting our
That's the
business.
upstate New York in you. That with the kind of the threatening tone there. I had a little softer tone.
Yeah, I'm not into that.
Wasn't exactly a don't get comfortable, but in a lot of ways that's it, right? I mean, it's a just don't lose sight. Don't lose sight of how you got there and how you kind of got embedded with the organization, and don't think that they don't still want to see what's working, what's not at a core level. It always comes back to that, and at some point in time, somebody's going to raise their hand and look around and say, "We have 4 new things that we've tacked onto our business that are working varying degrees of good to okay to maybe bad, and this big piece, the piece that we signed up for, has just become this piece. Maybe it's gotten so ingrained in the business that it's functioning all on its own, but we just don't see that very often.
Yeah, I I think you're seeing some of the legacy companies that exist right now. They're having trouble.
Yeah,
They have so much tech debt. that they're struggling to innovate their products. And there's some young and up and coming businesses and platforms that I think are going to take some market share. It's fascinating to watch, and maybe it's because they don't really even know what's going on inside your organization because they're not asking the right questions. They got too much turnover. Who knows what it is? But
just built and built on legacy foundations.
yeah,
If you're built 10, 15, 20 years ago, the way we talk about being built today, right? The company's built today, built on their tech. You're probably layering new pieces onto a kind of an old stack, and it can slow you down. It can certainly make you vulnerable. That's for sure.
what did you find out in the field from the operations folks, whether they're regionals or at the practice level? Did you ask the question what do you if there was a technology to help your business, what would it look like? Or was it a specific focus? I'm curious if there were things that they said that they were excited about either using currently or they'd like to look at, or even lastly, stop sending me stuff. What was the vibe, right?
Yeah.
I know there are some practices that are just like the guinea pigs of the DSO,
Yeah.
and I'm sure there's a
Yeah.
lot of that.
Yeah, and thankfully I was in some that we intentionally selected for strong leadership, but haven't traditionally been the guinea pig. So I'm trying to skate around, not really talking about exactly who or what I was there with
Yeah,
to do,
I don't mean to call
but
people out.
no, the solution that we were there for has been said to be very needed. We talked a lot about scanners and how they're being used. That was not what I was there for, but we talked a lot about that, how they're being used, implemented, what if potentially an additional one is being needed. And in some locations, they just want some cosmetic pieces done to the office. They feel like everything's running pretty smoothly. They want new carpet or new countertop. So it's interesting when you do probe and you go and you say, hey, what could we do to make your life better? You get a lot of different answers from everybody.
Yeah.
Talk to some of the doctors, like, hey, are the pieces that are being brought to you, the educational pieces, the trainings, the resources, are they helpful? Are you finding them impactful? Are you able to bring what you learned back? And the answers run the gamut. I mean, overall positive, overwhelmingly positive on that front. But you start at probing with a few questions in any office, and you're going to get a lot of answers. And the answer from that front desk representative to the treatment coordinator to the office manager to the financial coordinator to the hygienist and
It's all
doctor,
different.
it looks very different. Yeah, on what they need.
Yeah.
So you're never going to meet everybody's need, but you hit it right there. I mean, you got to go in and ask the questions. Can't be afraid of the answers.
Yeah, and then it's your job to decide where to focus that time because yeah, that's a lot to take in. Who's not using scanners at this point? I came into the business back in the day. I remember when they weren't very good, and now I feel like they're relatively standard. At least in most DSOs, I think there's a lot of agreements, but I'm curious about scanners just because of my background. What are you seeing?
It would be really interesting to know that exact number. Tell me the exact number of dental offices that just don't have a digital scanner. I assume we'd be surprised by the number. It'd probably be higher than you would guess. Thankfully, most of the offices I'm in are very digitally forward with some pieces on there, scanners, overjet. How they're being utilized and how are they being effective in there. That's always the real question. Are they being kind of operationalized in there, or are they sitting in a corner or just not being used? Yeah, scanners are one of those things you would think they're just the standard of care, and they're so powerful. I mean, it's such a visual tool, but
Somebody's listening to
think
this,
that
maybe
number will
Steve
be high.
Craig, and Steve Craig probably knows the answer.
He
It- it-
knows. He
My,
knows all.
I mean, is it 50%?
No, that don't. No, I was thinking the number high. 30 popped into my head, like maybe 30% of dental. I'm sure we could find it, right? If we would have done a little show homework before this, I'm sure.
Are you
we could
doing
find it.
are you guys doing full mouth scans for every single
Oh yeah.
patient for their
I mean,
records?
you
Yeah.
try to. But again, it's, offices are busy. Like wellness scans is, I don't know where it exactly came from. You'd like to think it's a function of a line. I know they were kind of the first I heard really, really projecting it forward, but smart, right? I mean, you capture the data on the patient, you have the full mouth scan. Like I said earlier, it's such a visual tool. All the scanners, I mean, there's iTero, Trios, Prime Scan, all the way down the line. They all are pretty substantial capabilities, and some are better than others for certain things. But I mean, what you can do with the patient when you have that data every 6 months or whatever the timeline is that you have it, it's pretty. It can be pretty impactful, and it's, you don't want to. I know people don't like thinking about things as like a sales tool in the office, but at the very least, you can convey the need for treatment. So it really is something that can back you up. It's how I look at, there's so much more than that too, but the Overjet, Pearl videos of the world too can just really help offices convey maybe what they've been saying for a year, 2 years, 5 years to a patient, to say, this is important, and here's why. This isn't a mirror, and this isn't an x-ray. Let me really show you what's happening in here. So
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this right here is an award for selling some scanners. So
which one back there, the clear one?
yeah, actually,
Can't
this one
see all
is
those.
too.
What that'll be next episode. I think we need to go into exactly what all those awards back there are.
This is a moose that was in the backyard here.
I don't think all I see is his legs. They
Yeah.
cut you off the screen. You can see those Bills logos though.
Yeah, we'll see what happens this weekend. What's your plan? Are you heading to some conferences? You said you got some more clinical visits.
Yeah,
What do you
some
got coming up?
more field stuff going on. Just trying to really get some things tacked on to the business that can really have an impact. Orbit coming up with the Planet DDS folks. Trying to do more conferences. Just life is awfully busy right now. So probably
Are you going
get
to
more
Dallas?
conferences more middle of the year.
Are you going to Dallas for Dykema's event?
I wanted to. Same. Had a conflict. Had a kind of something that was already on the schedule that I couldn't get out of. Just emailed Laura the other day and said, "Hey, I really want to get to this. This is not me trying to weasel out, because I do. I mean, there's always. You told me about the last one, and I want to get to one of the big one is great, obviously, right?
They're doing
But
another one.
there can be
There's
so
another
much
one
impact.
before Dykema.
Oh,
I
nice.
think it's in Vegas.
Nice.
I'm 50-50 on Orbit. I'll be at Inner Circle. I'm actually heading to DEO with a client. I'm
You
going
had
to
great
that.
things to say about DO last year, right?
I mean, I subscribe to the community aspect of what we do. I think you would agree with me about the relationships we have, the friendships, all of that. But not only that, but being able to kind of how we became friends, right? The back and forth talking about your careers, things you're up against. I subscribe to that philosophy when it comes to DSO leaders and executives within, the world of entrepreneurship. So anything like the DEO, whether it's a membership or this newer program with Dykema, that brings the same people consistently in a room 2 or 3 times a year, along with the big event, which is not going to go away, is amazing. That smaller, intimate environment. Think about like a 350 person like Irish Catholic wedding or like a 75 person wedding where you're able to talk to people and see each other. I believe in that community aspect, and that's what I think Brian's doing and Laura at Dykema, and that's why I think the membership plan at DEO works, because the same people see each other that are up against the same challenges every day, with whether it's personally, professionally, trying to run their businesses. So any conferences that really lean into that, I think this year and next year are going to be impactful. Certainly content is important, but I believe community is potentially even more important. So
Yeah,
that's my
opportunity for
take.
fellowship, right? Just
Yeah.
sometimes those hallway conversations mean more than anything anybody could say on stage.
Yeah, absolutely. And when the people are on stage, like, don't have the same people, right? But anyway,
Yeah, get you up there.
yeah, I'm working on All right, man. Well, any announcements at all for the listeners? Or are you good to go? And until next time.
No, I think we're here. We're 2026. Let's keep kicking this thing off to a new year. I mean, you mentioned it, the community, the fellowship. We're kind of there's a lot of aspects of this where we're all in this together. So let's keep like moving the entire community and industry forward together, and not to sing kumbaya right here at the end, but I think it matters in this industry. So you're making me want to get to some of these smaller conferences too.
I think you'll get a lot out of it. Yeah, I'm a believer for sure.
How about you?
Um,
Any closing comments here?
yeah, I mean, 23-17 Buffalo is probably my closing comment. I think it's going to be a lower scoring game, and I think they will play in Houston for the AFC Championship game. I
There
think
we
both
go.
road teams are going to win this weekend.
All
So
right,
that's my
all right.
closing comments.
I love the
And
enthusiasm. Let's
if
go
this is
Buffalo.
wrong, I'm just gonna cut it out. We're not
Yeah,
gonna.
just cut it out. Yeah. Until then.
All right, my man. Till next time.
Yeah. Good chatting with you, man. All right.
You too, bro.